Thank you, everyone, for joining us at BMC Exchange 2021 in this session called Controlling Workflow Insights, where we are very excited to announce a brand new addition to Control M called Workflow Insights. I am Basil Faruqi, and I'm joined today by my colleague Amir Banai, who's a senior product manager out of our product management organization. The agenda today is very simple. I will start off with a little bit of an intro and background to Workflow Insights. And then Amir will take us through a live demo as well as the architectural considerations for this new edition. So without further ado, let me dive right in. So customers have been using Control M to run critical workflows across their companies for many, many years. And we have seen them automate things like financial close, billing, invoicing, payroll, lots of data pipelines, ETL, machine learning pipelines. And one of the things that has been very clear from the get-go is that these workflows are not static. They are constantly changing. Companies are adding new jobs, removing jobs. And a lot of this is driven by business activities such as, release of new products, expansion of customers, mergers and acquisitions. And all these constant changes to the environment can sometimes lead to service degradation. What do we mean by that? Well, a workflow for financial close, for example, has 150 jobs in it. And you've just acquired a new company and you've added some. And slowly, the time for financial close has been creeping up. Instead of taking an hour and a half, it has now started to take maybe 2 hours longer. And a lot of these types of changes often tend to be in small increments, which makes it harder to track and really be aware of it. And these problems often become visible either very close to being when they're a major problem, like a missed SLA, for example, financial close or payroll. These are highly time-sensitive services, and anything that gets you either very close to the deadline or past it is problematic. And oftentimes, it's not so much that you are getting close to the deadline or missing a deadline. Sometimes the business use case dictates that you actually shrink the amount of time you're using to process because of changes in the business, right? That's something we've seen across many industries where they've been asked to, do the same amount of work, but do it faster. And that requires analyzing workflows to understand, okay, what adjustments can be made so that you can now do the same amount of work in a shorter amount of time. And obviously, this is not a new need or problem. And what we saw in the market is that our customers were building a lot of custom reports and their own dashboards to be able to trend and track a lot of this type of activity based on the metrics out of Control M. These metrics are things like runtimes, average runtimes, and a lot of that was aided by the tools that we provide in Control M, things like several utilities, which allow log extraction out of Control M, audit data out of Control M, runtime data, the use of the automation API to connect and gather a lot of that. And they were piping this information to data stores and building reports and dashboards on top of that. This activity for the product owners and the other teams was quite time consuming and resource intensive. So Amir and I, along with the rest of the team, spent the last several months really deep diving into this topic, doing customer interviews and really understanding what are customers looking for, how do they want to visualize this data. And what we concluded after some of that market research was what we really need is a solution that can sort of capture runtime metrics in real time as these jobs run, archive those into a separate repository, and you should be able to have highly interactive dashboards where you can visualize the trends, set KPIs, be able to measure. The famous saying goes, you can't fix something if you're not able to, really measure it, and really allow not only just the Control M product owners, but the constituents that they serve, the application teams, to really focus on continuous optimization and not really have to deal with the plumbing behind the scenes that leads to the insights. So today we are excited to announce a new edition called Workflow Insights. Now, Workflow Insights is a set of 8 highly interactive dashboards, and this really covers dozens of use cases. Unfortunately, today, because of the brevity of time, we don't have the luxury of diving deep into all of these dashboards. We will cover some of that in the demo, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But when we surveyed our customers and worked with our design partners, the value really can be categorized into 3 main areas. And this is not by any means an exhaustive list, but these were the things that stood out the most as we went and spoke to customers. So the first one is workflow optimization, and I talked about that, right? These environments, workflows are constantly changing, jobs are being added, removed, modified, and you want to be able to track these things before they become a problem. Where are you having the most job failures? Where are those jobs concentrated? Are they on a particular agent? Which applications are having some of these failures, so that you're able to trend and track those and react to them as proactively as possible. The other is resource optimization, and oftentimes when we say resource optimization, there's a chance that people might think we're talking about infrastructure resources or network. We're talking about the resources along which you're distributing the Control-M workload here. For example, which agents are all these jobs spread across? Customers are running workloads in Control-M across a very diverse infrastructure, from the mainframe, distributed systems to cloud. And one of the use cases to our design partners that came up was they found out that they had several agents in their environment, which they were constantly, maintaining, upgrading, patching, keeping them up to date, which is a great practice. But they were running sort of ad hoc workflows there. These were shell scripts primarily, and were running sort of occasionally. And through the insights, they realized that, we could convert these agents to agentless, and that means that takes away the maintenance and upkeep of an agent. Now, in some cases, agents are required, and in other cases, you have the option and Control-M of going agentless. So really, without being able to easily understand where workflows are running, how they're running, it's kind of hard to make those decisions. And the third area is sort of intelligent maintenance, which is kind of a continuation from the last point, which is a lot of times, particularly during testing, jobs are created and then they just stay there. Many times jobs are created as kind of dummy jobs. They're supposed to not really do anything. They're mimicking a particular workflow because you're testing. You really don't want to be executing the real workflow. But you've created them, they're there, and you kind of forget about them. Some of the insights that you'll get out of these dashboards will allow you to understand, okay, well, I've got these set of jobs that are really, for example, dummy jobs. Why do I have 300 of them? Oh, well, it turns out 100 of these were part of a test bed that we had rolled out, and we no longer need them. And you can keep this environment clean and pristine. So, okay, now to the more exciting part of our session today, which is the demo. Like I said, there's literally dozens of use cases that you can go after with Workflow Insights, but for the purposes of our demo today, we're going to focus on 3 of the dashboards out of the 8. The first one that Amir will take us through is Workflow Health. And he'll cover more than that, but like one of the main questions we'll try to answer is, well, which applications have the most failed jobs, right? Jobs run, some of them fail, and we want to keep the failures at a minimum. We want to be able to track and trend, like, wow, we all of a sudden are seeing a spike from a particular application, right? So we'll examine that. SLA management, I've worked with Control-M customers for a long time, and I've never met a customer who says, well, I can just order jobs in and it doesn't matter when they complete, right? Usually these workflows have pretty stringent SLAs, business SLAs that they have to meet. Well, which business services might be at risk of missing their SLAs because you've been adding jobs, or the same number of jobs are now taking longer because they process more data. Being able to visualize that and answer that question, we found that that's very important. And alerts and notification. These workflows, these jobs that are running, they generate a lot of alerts. Alerts have important information, and you may want to be be interested in understanding, well, which jobs are generating the most alerts? Why are we getting so many alerts and warnings? And being able to not only answer these specific questions, but this also sort of helps you connect the dots across some of these domains as you get exposed to this information through workflow insights. Okay, so without further ado, let's get to the more exciting part of this presentation, which is the demo. So Amir, I'm going to hand it over to you. Take it away.
So thank you, Basil. So there are two goals for this live demo. First is to show you a few examples how you can improve your business, meaning all the business workflows that Control-M orchestrates in your organization using the insights and KPIs that are exposed when you will use the workflow insight. And second is to give you really in a nutshell, high-level overview of the underlying infrastructure that support this new solution. So let's start. So as you can see in the screen, after you will install and activate the Workflow Insight, you will have a new domain in the Control-M web client named Workflow Insight. And as Basil mentioned, it will expose 8 built-in dashboards around specific challenges that our customers have in their environments. So in the scope of this demo, I want to go over with you on 3 of those dashboards. Before I'm starting to dive into the workflow health, a few words about the generic capabilities that are relevant to all the dashboards. So first of all, as Basil mentioned, all the dashboards are designed around a specific business challenge, and all the insight, all those panels that you see over here are there in order to help you address this challenge. So for example, the workflow health dashboard that we see right now, the challenge, of course, for our customers to make sure that the business workflows that Control-M orchestrates and all the jobs, all the atomic units that build those workflows are healthy and stable over time. So this is the first thing that is generic to all the dashboard. The second thing is generic is the set of filters that, of course, affecting all the data that you see in the dashboard. So the first one is over here, the time filter. So the time filter allows you to explore any historical period according to your needs. It could be last 24 hours, last 7 days, last month, last year, last 1 hour, etc. And of course, that every time that you change the time, all the data in the dashboard is being refreshed accordingly. Another option to select a time frame is just using the mouse, zooming in inside a graph, and then you select this specific period. The other filters that are available is over here in the top left corner. You can add filters that, again, affecting all the data in the dashboard. Each dashboard potentially have a different set of filters that's relevant to the insight inside the dashboard. So over here, you can see, for example, the jobs application, the end time, the end status, the folders, the OS, meaning the Control-M agent, job name, job types, etc. So, for example, if I'll select a specific application, now all the insight in the dashboard are showing all the data for this specific application. The third filtering capability is the search field over here that allow you to create more sophisticated logical expression using Kibana query language. Okay, for example, I want to see only the job name that starts with J and the application is this one or this one. All right, so this is also more advanced way to get more focused insight. And by the way, over here, you can use the save query to save all the filtering that you did, give it a logical name. And by that, you don't have to really find them over and over again. And this mechanism, by the way, allow application owners to consume those insights in a self-service manner, so they can see just the data that is relevant for the workflows that they own. Another use of the filters that I'll show you later is to get more focused insights. For example, I want to see all the insights, but just for my file transfer jobs. Okay. So let's dive into the workflow health dashboard. So over here, what we can see the execution success rate, meaning how many jobs ended up okay, comparing to the total execution in that period. We can see the volumes, right? The total executions, how many jobs ended okay, how many jobs failed. Over here, you can see the daily execution trends of job that failed. So every point in the graph is the aggregation of all the jobs that failed in that day. And by clicking on that specific day, you can see all the jobs that failed in this specific date. So the insight over here allow you to see the trends of failure. Is it getting bigger and bigger? Do you have peaks? When are the peaks? Why are the peaks? What is causing those peaks of failures? If I'm scrolling down over here, I can see a different perspective of source of failures in your environment. So for example, I can see which are the top 10 jobs that had the highest number of job failures in that period. And in the right, I see a list of jobs, list of all the jobs that had the highest number, filtered by the highest number of jobs failure. So I can maximize this panel. Over here, you can see not just the job name, but also the metadata of this execution, on which control M server, what is the folder, the application, sub-application, the breakdown for job types, the control M agent, etc. And by the way, each insight you can also export into a CSV report. So if I'm getting back to the dashboards, below that, you can see different perspective for failures. So you can see over here which are the top 10 applications that had the highest number of job failures in that period. Again, the list of applications that had the job failures, the top 10 folders that had the highest number of job failures, and the top 10 control M agents that had the highest number of job failures. By the way, everything is clickable. So again, if I'm looking over here in the job that failed most and I'm click on this specific job, automatically all the data is filtered for this specific job. And now I can see all the insights for this specific job, right? I can see the execution success rate for these jobs. I can see how many times it failed. I can see the daily failure for this job. So this is allow you to do more drill down and understand better what is happening. And another thing that I wanted to show you is, again, if, for example, I want to see all this data just for my OS jobs, right? I can filter just by job type and select OS job types. And now, again, I see all the data, but only for OS job types. Okay, so this allows you also to do the same for any job types that you have in the system to see all those insights for your file transfer, for SAP jobs, Informatica, or any application job. Moving on to the next dashboard that I want to show you. So let's go to the SLA Management Service dashboard. So the SLA management for customers who are still not in version 20 is the new term for Batch Impact Manager for BIM. Right, so BIM SLA management is our existing model that allow you to put a business SLA for your critical workflows, and then the model, right, is monitoring the runtime of the service and give you early notification if the service is going to be late. It's going to pass the business SLA, right? And of course, the business needs behind this dashboard for our customers is they want to make sure that those SLA Management Services are never late, okay, that they are healthy and they are stable. And if there are issues, they want to understand the issues in the service scope or inside the service, which jobs is the problematic jobs. So what we're showing over here is the inside, like the service success rate, meaning how many services executed successfully comparing to the total services executions. You can see the volumes. You can see how many services were late in that period. Over here, you can see which were the top 10 services that had the highest number of execution that passed their SLA deadline. So these are the services that you want to check and fix and improve. To the right, you see the list of all the services that had execution that passed their SLA deadline in that period. When I'm scrolling down, I can see more insights. So over here, I can see which are the top 10 services that had the highest risk of passing their SLA deadline, meaning they have the minimum average slack time. So slack term in SLA management, it's the time between the SLA service completion and the business SLA, right? So if the SLA service complete at 3 o'clock and the business SLA is 3:20, the slack is 20 minutes. So the SLA services that had the minimum average slack time are the ones that are most in risk to pass their SLA deadline. You want to look on those services to make sure that they are not impacting the business. And over here, you can see those services slack time trend. So again, you can see if the slack time is getting lower and lower, they're getting closer and closer to the SLA deadline. So even if the SLA management model is not alerting you that the current business day is going to be late, you can see the trend, historical trend, and if it will continue like that, it will put a risk in a few weeks, in a month, to the business SLA. And of course, you can filter all the insights per specific services, a group of services, etc., to see those insights for the services you want. Over here, you get a similar insight, but on the service duration from different perspectives. You can see the service duration over time. And again, you can see if there's any degradation in service performance, meaning that the service duration is getting longer and longer over time. And if this is happening, again, you need to check that because in some point, it will impact the SLA deadline. Scrolling down. So over here, we can see insights about which were the most problematic jobs that belong to SLA services, which are the top 10 services jobs that had the highest number of failures. And in the right, again, you have the list of services jobs that had failed in that period, together with more data. And in the bottom, we have a set of insight that will allow you to effectively reduce services completion time. So we heard from a few customers that have a business need to reduce the service completion time, just for the simple fact that they will make more money if the service will be shorter. Unfortunately, this is not so easy to do because those services can be built from thousands of jobs, and you need to understand which jobs are part of the service critical path, meaning they are affecting directly the service completion. So over here, we supplied really cool insight to allow you to understand what's happening in runtime and how you can shorten the service completion time. So over here, you can see the top 10 longest jobs that are affecting the service critical path. And into right, the list of jobs that are part of the critical path, filtering by their average duration. So you can go to those jobs and see if you can reduce those jobs duration, you will directly reduce the overall service completion time. And in the bottom, you'll see an insight around which are the top 10 jobs that had the longest time gaps that are affecting the service critical path. So a time gap in SLA management means that you have a job A, and when you finish, job B start. Job A finished at 3, okay? Job B started at 3:30. So we have a 30 minutes gap that the service flow was stopped, that the service was not progressing, right? So you want to go to those gaps and check them and see if there's a real business need for these time gaps, or maybe just a legacy time frame that was forgotten in job B. And by reducing those time gaps and eliminating them, you will, of course, reduce the service completion time. So really cool insight around SLA Management Services. The last dashboard that I want to show you in the scope of this demo is the workflow alerts. So as we all know, alerts in Control M is a clear indication that something that not efficient happened, something that should not happen happened. That's why the alert was triggered. And the business goal for our customers, of course, to minimize those alerts to minimum, and to understand what are the most noisy jobs or workflows that generate the highest number of alerts. So over here, you can see the volume of alerts in that period that you choose. And again, like always, according to all the filters, you can see the alerts by urgency distribution, how many of them were critical, how many were urgent, how many were normal. In this panel, you see the trend, the daily alerts opens versus closed, how many alerts were open versus how many alerts were closed. Of course, your goal is to have those lines as close as possible. In this insight, you can see which are the most common alert messages, right? So this can give you a really good indication what is the reoccurring issues in your environment. And of course, you want to address them and minimize them as much as you can. If I scroll down, I see now the sources, the main sources that are generating the alerts. So I see over here, which are the top 10 jobs that are generating the highest number of alerts, the list of all the jobs that generate alerts in that period, which are the top 10 applications that generate the highest number of alerts, and the list of applications that generates the alert, and the top 10 Control M agents that are the highest number of jobs that generate alerts. So different perspective of alert sources that will allow you to identify where the noise is coming from and how you can track that and improve that. And as I showed you in the workflow health dashboard, using the filters, you can get all those insights for your specific application or your specific job types, like for which file transfer generating most alert or which SAP jobs are generating the most alerts. Again, we have much more insights in the other dashboards, but at this point, I want to go back to the presentation and tell you a little bit about the new infrastructure that supports this new solution. But before I'll tell you about the architecture, a few words about the requirement for the architecture. Okay, so first of all, the first requirement for the workflow insight solution is to have no impact to the core Control M production performance, right? You don't want that this new solution that is now in runtime gathering millions of metrics around your workflows will affect the actual performance of the business workflows that Control M orchestrate. Right. So this was the first requirement. The second requirement was to be able to handle any Control M execution volumes. So it doesn't matter if you have a Control M environment where you executed like 1,000 jobs a day or 1 million jobs a day. It can handle any execution volumes. Third, we want to ensure the high availability of those metrics, right? So we supply from the first version high availability and disaster recovery for the workflow metrics that ensure that you have no data lost and all those metrics that are being collected are safe and available. The fourth point is that we are support retaining the metrics up to 5 years. Okay, so this is one of the settings that you need to do after you activate the workflow insight to set for how long you want to retain the metrics. And the fifth point is that, as we all familiar with Control M, we supply the enterprise security level for authorization, authentication, SSL, LDAP integration, and all the other things that we all familiar with Control M. So what we see now in the screen is the high-level architecture of the workflow insight. Again, I will not dive into the details, just to give you, in a nutshell, an overview of what does it mean for you to install and activate the workflow insight, and how it works, that it's not affecting the Control M core components, right? So first of all, what we see over here. So over here, we see the primary enterprise manager, this cubic that we all familiar and aware of the primary enterprise manager. And those two cubics are what we call distributed enterprise manager. So distributed enterprise manager is existing mechanism, right? It exists for many years that allow you to create more instances for the primary enterprise manager. You install another enterprise manager, but you're not giving it its own database. You connect it to the primary enterprise manager database. And like, for example, the workload archiving, the distributed enterprise manager is the basic infrastructure for the workflow insight. So to tell you the installation story, really in 3 steps, in order to activate and work with the workflow insight, you will need to upgrade the primary enterprise manager to version 20 FixSpec 2 or above. You will need to provision new 2 dedicated machines and install on them distributed enterprise manager. And then you will need to activate the workflow insight on each distributed enterprise manager. And after you will activate on the second distributed enterprise manager, the workflow insight, behind the scenes, you will get an Elasticsearch cluster, okay, that will store all the metrics, and a Kafka cluster. So you can see over here, there's Elasticsearch node on the primary enterprise manager, but it's not storing any data. It's just serving as a third master to ensure the availability. And the Kafka is the streaming piece that we use in order to stream all the metrics into the Elasticsearch using a new workflow insight service. A few words about Elasticsearch. So Elasticsearch is a distributed search and analytics engine. It's built on Apache Lucene. It started as an open source. Today, there's a company around it, Elastic. And since its release back in 2010, Elasticsearch has quickly become the most popular search engine and is commonly used for business analytics and operation intelligence use cases. We are bringing with us the open source version, and we adjust it performance-wise to the workflow insights needs. Okay, it's not a relationship database like Oracle and MS SQL and Postgres that we are familiar in Control M. Elasticsearch is a document-based storage. Every insight in the end stores a JSON document inside the Elasticsearch. Really, really quick, really, really strong. And this is the infrastructure that allows us to support any volume of metrics, because you can see over here like 2 nodes, but you can add 3, 4, 5 nodes as much as you need in your environments. A few words about how we ensure that this new solution and all the amount of metrics that are being collected will not impact the performance of Control M. So nothing is being stored in the primary enterprise manager database. There are no querying to the primary EM database, which sometimes we see customers that's doing that in order to get insight, and it's really, really not recommended and can impact the production. All the metrics, as soon as they are exist, they are finished, like job was ordered, job was finished to execute, SLA service ended. They're automatically at runtime in memory being streamed by the Kafka into the Elasticsearch cluster. And all the dashboard that I showed you, all the queries are going directly through REST API into the Kibana components on the distributed enterprise manager. So the Kibana component, by the way, is the visualization component, part of the Elastic stack that we used in order to create all the dashboard that I showed you. And by that, all the traffic is not going through the existing channels that serve the user that are using the Control M web client or desktop client or automation API, etc. So to summarize this demo, we are very excited about this new solution. We all know that in these days, you cannot manage any business, and for sure you cannot improve any business if you cannot measure and track the business relevant KPIs. And we are sure that using this new solution, you will get the insight that you need in order to improve your business workflows that are being orchestrated by Control M. So thank you for joining us today for this session on the new Control M Workflow Insight. Have a great day.